All right, welcome in. We are back after a vacation. Got an awesome show tonight. Got a guest, Mike Craven from Dave Campbell Football. Let's bring him in. We're going to talk all things college football in Texas. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Pretty good, man. Can you just to start off? Can you tell us where it's Dave Campbell, right?
Yeah, Dave Campbell's Texas football. We do a couple magazines here in the state that are pretty popular, and we also stream a bunch of high school games. So we kind of cover it from high school through college all the way up. TexasFootball.com.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I actually just got back from Texas like maybe 3 days ago. That's where I went on vacation. My family lives out there. I'm from Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
Okay. But my dad lives in Abilene. I got my aunt in Van, Texas, and got family in Tyler, Texas, and all over. So, when does that magazine come out?
Pretty much any day now. We got a lot of them back to the office. So just starting to ship them out. Then it's just a matter of kind of how quickly they get them on the shelves at individual stores. So they start sprinkling across the state kind of that first week of July. And then if you're a subscriber, they mail it straight to your door.
Oh, awesome. All right, so let's get into it. I wanted to start here because I wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way because it seems like everybody's kind of tired of Arch Manning talk. Um, I'm not. I kind of feel bad for the kid because just seems like he gets crapped on a lot by a lot of people, fans in particular, that are kind of tired of hearing about him. But I just wanted to see your thoughts on before I get into the Texas discussion overall as a team. What is your are you buying the hype he's getting? It seems to be a disconnect. Media seems to be, buying the hype. Fans seem to be pushing back. Where do you stand on the Arch Manning discourse and how do you feel about him?
Yeah, probably in the middle. I think his ceiling is as high as the media hype suggests. I think he could potentially be the number one pick in the NFL draft. I believe Steve Sarkisian knows more about quarterbacks than I ever will, and he seems to believe Arch Manning is tremendous. There's a reason that they let Quinn Ewers walk out that door. If they didn't believe in Manning and they wanted Ewers back, I'd imagine he'd still be the quarterback in Austin. And so I think in the end, Arch Manning is going to be everything that people say he's going to be. Will he be that week one against Ohio State? Will he be that at Red River rivalry in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl where really good quarterbacks have folded? Will he be that on the road to Georgia? Like Texas may not achieve their goals this year. Maybe Arch Manning isn't the quarterback he eventually will be. He is still a first-year starting quarterback, and I think we got to see it before we anoint him.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair take. On the Texas stuff, so we did on our show, we did a like everybody does, a way too early top 25, a post spring top 25, and eventually we'll do a preseason top 25. And I had Texas, I think, way too early number one, post spring number two. And I don't know if it's just now we're in kind of like that real dead period with sports. It's just like MLB going on that I'm having more time to think about it. So I'm kind of talking myself out of things. And I was actually texting some of the co-hosts on the show about how I was kind of starting to push back a little bit on Texas now and wanting to drop them a little bit. When I was prepping for the show, 4 starters on the O-line gone. Golden and Gunner both gone. New quarterback. I think they lost a good bit on the D-line. Where do you stand on Texas overall? Has Texas reached that point, kind of like Georgia, Ohio State, where you just expect them to reload and keep going? And what's your general outlook on them?
I think that's the most interesting part about the offseason Texas Longhorn talk is for a very long time, and up until about 2 years ago, Texas never got the benefit of the doubt. It was always the Longhorns will lose a couple that they're not supposed to. They're a soft program that just has talented players, but not a great team. And then all of a sudden, in 2 years, back-to-back semifinals, the Sarkisian's just recruiting really well. All of a sudden, it's like, well, it doesn't matter who Texas lost. They got Arch Manning coming in. They're going to replace those offensive linemen. Like, I think the criticisms or the concerns are fair. They lost most of their production out wide. They lost their best offensive lineman for sure. But if you're high on Texas, you're just betting on the reload instead of the rebuild. You know, that they've signed multiple top 5 recruiting classes in a row. They're obviously developing talent really well. I think they lead the country in NFL draft picks over the last 2 years. Really good in the transfer portal. They went and got, you know, a good tight end and another wide receiver. So if you think the young guys, including Arch Manning, are going to be really good, I think you buy Texas and you think they're going to be, you know, one of the contenders. But if you think it's going to take a year of growing pains, then I totally get why you would have them closer to 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe.
Yeah, that's funny you said that. I actually, when my group chat, when we were asking how far I'll drop them, I actually said somewhere between that 5 to 10 range. So going on to Texas A&M, I'm a huge fan of Mike Elko. I thought what he did at Duke was really, really good. I think, if I remember correctly, I think you've been to Texas A&M this offseason for some stories or something.
Yeah, I go to, when we're making the magazine, I go to all 13 FBS colleges across state, kind of sit with the coaches and players, coordinators, that kind of thing.
What have you noticed? What has been the biggest difference between Mike Elko and Jimbo Fisher in your eyes?
Probably just the organization. He seems, you know, he's a defensive coordinator. I think he's very by the book. But he just has, I think he has a clear goal of what he wants that program to look like. And he's a little bit more disciplined than I think that Fisher was. From a media standpoint, he's a lot more personable. It's easier to get an interview with Elko. He has good rapport with the reporters during press conferences. So that part's been fun. But when you talk to the players, you know, in interviews or behind the scenes, the one thing that they always mention is the accountability. That it was a little bit of kind of the wild, wild west or a professional sports model where it's like, hey, we're paying y'all a lot of NIL money. You do your job, we'll do ours. But with Elko, I think it's more of the old school kind of college. Like, you got to be at weight room at this time. You got to be at breakfast at this time. You got to be, and I think that's really helped Texas A&M because they needed more structure.
Yeah, I like hearing that. Do you think this year that this could be the year? I went and looked at it. It's also been like kind of a running joke with people that are not Aggie fans. The kind of 8-4, 7-5 seems like since after Johnny Manziel left, as if they've only had like 1 year where they didn't have 4 or 5 losses. Is this a year, in your opinion, that they push and get that 9-3, 10-2, or are we still one more year away?
I think there's still another year or two away. I mean, we talked about Arch Manning earlier. I think Marcel Reed has a lot of question marks. Just kind of what he's going to be 4-4 as a starter last year. But didn't beat the best teams on his schedule. So just can they win those games? And their schedule is really hard this year. I mean, they go to Notre Dame, they go to Texas, they go to LSU. So if you don't steal any of those games, you're 9-3 at best. And that's before you play Florida at home and Auburn at home. I wrote a column about this, and I think it's true. Your opinion of Texas A&M is just your opinion of Marcel Reed. If you think Marcel Reed is going to be really good in that offense, which I can buy because Colin Klein knows how to use running quarterbacks, then take A&M. I think their defense is going to be better. They return their 7 best offensive linemen, really good running backs. But if you don't think Marcel Reed is anything more than an average quarterback, then I don't see how you can believe A&M is any more than 7-5 at 8-4.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's been my biggest question mark is Marcel Reed in the passing game. I think the running game is going to be phenomenal. And like you said, the OC there, he does a wonderful job there. I thought you had a really interesting thing on Twitter.
Out of my face there.
Yeah. I thought you had a really interesting thing. I can't even remember what your answer was. My mind's blanking, but you had talked on Twitter about the 3rd best job in Texas. Who was that before I asked my question? Was it Texas Tech, you said?
I took TCU, but TCU, I think it's an open debate for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. I thought for some reason I thought you said Texas Tech. I can't remember. Why TCU and then I'll ask you another question after that. Why did you pick TCU?
Well, I think TCU has been the best job for a while, right? Like Texas Tech, the location always hurt them. SMU, they weren't in a Power 4 conference. and TCU is the only one in a metroplex, right? Houston wasn't in a power conference either; they were AAC teams with SMU. So TCU was the only non-Texas Texas A&M team that was in a metroplex. And Dallas Fort Worth produces as many recruits as anywhere else in the nation. I think it's Miami, Houston, and Dallas are like the three biggest hubs. For Atlanta's probably in there. And so I think that they have an advantage there. Their stadium is big. Their donor base is big. They've been in a power conference for a while. TCU has signed the third best recruiting class in the state 7 of the last 10 years, including 2 of the last 3. And in my mind, SMU and Tech have the money, and they're getting better, and that's awesome. But in my mind, this sport still comes down to accumulating and acquiring and developing talent from the high school ranks. And until proven otherwise, I think TCU is the best equipped to do that. Now, I say that while SMU has like a top 20 class and just got a commitment from an offensive lineman today that had offers from A&M, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. So the answer might become SMU because they are also in that same metroplex. And they have donors that have more money than, God, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe SMU becomes that. They're working against 40 years of being in purgatory where they just had generation after generation of students there that are now alumni that didn't go to school when football was important. Yeah. And they have to overcome that. And right now, their biggest donors are guys who graduated in 78, 79, 80, like when they were rolling, and they remember those great times. But they're going to have to kind of bridge the gap with 3 or 4 generations of students that didn't care about football at SMU because it wasn't a big deal. I think that's where TCU has the advantage. But, the sport's changing so fast. It might be SMU. It might be Tech. I think that's what makes that debate fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. I watched it on Twitter and was reading a lot of the replies. I thought it was very interesting. Speaking of TCU, most of the teams we're talking about tonight, I've watched most of them. I'm going to be honest, I did not watch. I was thinking about it today when I was thinking about questions to ask, and I was like, I don't think I watched the TCU game once last year. I watched a bunch of SMU. I watched Texas, Houston, a bunch of them. But I was like, oh, now I've heard Josh, I think it's Josh Hoover. Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, the quarterback. I've heard he's gotten a lot of hype. Other than that, I don't know much about TCU. Can you just give me and others that maybe like me that just don't know your outlook on them for 2025?
Yeah, I don't blame you from not watching a ton of them last year. They didn't get off to a great start. Like they were 3-3. They had blown a lead against UCF. They lost to Houston at home. And it looked really bad. Like I really started to think about like, okay, am I going to have to write Sonny Dykes is on the hot seat 2 years after playing for a national championship type stories? But then they won 6 of their last 7. And one of the main reasons why was Josh Hoover at quarterback, but the other was they started creating turnovers on defense. And if you look around at the best schools or the best programs, in my opinion, I think their roster may not always have a lot of continuity, but the good teams have coaching continuity now, right? Like if the roster is going to be in flux because of the transfer portal, well, at least we can keep the coordinators and the assistant coaches and the head coach. And I think that's what TCU has working for them. They got an offensive coordinator going into year 3, a defensive coordinator now going into year 2, a head coach in year 4, a quarterback in year 3. Like their bones are there to be an experienced kind of older team. And the last time TCU had an experienced older team, they played Georgia in the national championship. And so I'm not saying that I think their win total is 6.5. So I think that would be a big surprise. But for gamblers out there in my state, I think TCU is probably the most undervalued team right now. They just have a really tough schedule because the Big 12, everything's a 3-point spread, and who the hell knows who's going to win. But I do think TCU is an underrated team right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good stuff there. So when we were talking about the third best job, I had an interesting theory that I've been kind of cooking up in my head, and you're really plugged in around Texas football in general. So I wanted to get your theory on this. So like Clemson, this will make sense in a minute, but Clemson, before Dabo, they had like this run with Danny Ford, and then you had a pre-Danny Ford and then post-Danny Ford before Dabo, and it was just like a lot of really bad football, kind of average. There really wasn't much to Clemson. Then Dabo, takes over and he's turned Clemson into this national power. And they can compete for national championships. They're up there with Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, all them. And I don't see them going anywhere after Dabo. I have a theory that I think, and I've been called crazy for this, that Houston could do something similar to that. Am I completely off base, crazy, wacko, or could you see Houston with the right coach, which it seems like they have right now? Fritz is amazing. Be like a future Clemson down the road?
If they become that, it will be not because of the coach, but it'll be because of the donors behind the scenes. Right? Like Texas Tech has made this resurgence because they have a billionaire named Cody Campbell who's willing to spend the money. SMU is now playing for college football playoff spots and ACC championships because they have Dave Miller and Bill Armstrong, who are billionaires, and they want SMU to be great. Houston has Tillman Fertitta, but he's the Rockets owner. I think he's more worried about basketball. You see the Houston Cougars basketball team be really good and recruit well. I'm just not sure their pockets are deep enough. And in college football and the revenue share model, you have to be able to max that out. Your payroll has to be $17, $20, $25 million to like play with the Ohio States and play with the Clemsons and the Georgias and now the Texases and the SMUs and apparently the Texas Techs. In the state right now, I would say Houston's 6th or 7th on the pecking order. And the only way that they're going to close that gap is money. Now, if they got that rolling, and again, Houston's a different kind of school. SMU's a rich person school. Yeah. Right? Like SMU's a private school that costs $100,000 a semester. It's the elite of the elite. They were born with money. Like they have plenty to give to SMU, right? Yeah. TCU's a private school as well. Houston's more like Houston was a junior college until like the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like Houston's more of an everyman school. It's the city of Houston school, right? It's more of a populous school. And so they don't have the 13 or 14 mega donors that some of these other schools have, like Texas or SMU or Tech even. And so that's the thing that's going to hold Houston back, because for 30 years they were left out of the Southwest Conference and they played G5 football. And a lot of those students and a lot of the people in the city, they go watch the Astros or they go watch the Rockets or they go watch the Texans. If the city can get behind Houston and the money can get behind Houston, they have the most recruits of anywhere in the country. Like the NFL has more players from Houston than any other city currently. So the talent's there. It's in their backyard. Willie Fritz is awesome.
Yeah.
But they just need the backing to keep up.
That's interesting. I figured if you went the other way, it would be something to do with a donor base and being lesser than others. My co-host actually wanted me to ask you, sticking with Houston, speaking of you said you do high school and all that in the state of Texas. How did they end up getting, is it Henderson, the 5-star quarterback? Is he a local kid? I don't know much about him. I haven't watched him. Is he a local kid?
He's a local kid from Houston. Now, getting him to commit and getting him to sign are two different things, right? And so that's going to be the challenge for Houston. We just talked about the money. I don't think that's going to be the number one determining factor, but like all of us who work, it's a factor, right? And so I think the tie there, though, is his quarterback coach is Michael Bishop. He's really close to Michael Bishop, who is a quarterback at Kansas State, but also went through the JUCO ranks. And his coach in JUCO at Blinn was Willie Fritz. And so I think Fritz is really close with the family, really close with people who Keyshawn Henderson cares about their opinion and talk to. And it's also the ability to stay local and be the hometown hero and all that kind of stuff as well. But getting it across the finish line, that's the real key here. And if they can, I mean, you don't want to put too much on a kid, but it could be the thing that starts the run that you just talked about, right? Because Keyshawn Henderson there, and now all of a sudden the big money people in Houston are like Mattress Mac and stuff in Houston are like, oh, well, hey, we got a chance to win. It's right down here. I can give him some, like all of a sudden maybe the money, just what happened at A&M with Johnny Manziel. Like he built that stadium, like he made them a lot of money. Maybe Keyshawn Henderson can do the same and kind of start something for Houston because they need a seismic kind of a situation like that.
Yeah. That's a good comparison with the Manziel thing. I love that. Texas Tech, are you you buying the hype? Big portal class, 21 kids. They got some big ones on the D line and in secondary. Lee Hunter from UCF. I know the defense was really bad last year. They also made a great hire at DC with his name's Wood, defense coordinator from Houston. Are you buying it? You got them number one in the Big 12 going into the season?
That's a tough one. I go back and forth on this because the roster obviously should compete for a Big 12 championship. You're in year 4 under your head coach. They feel like they have 2 good quarterbacks, but they really like Baron Morton. They think his shoulder is going to be okay. I think a lot of this depends on Baron Morton's shoulder, but we had this conversation going into last year, and he played all 12 games of the regular season. So if he stays healthy, and maybe, when we're talking about these teams, I think a given is that they have to stay healthy, right? Like it can all go out the window if key players get hurt. But if Morton stays healthy, they're better on the lines of scrimmage, and that's really what's always held Texas Tech back. Like they've always had a really good 7-on-7 football team, right? Like they've always been able to throw the ball around, but they don't play hard-nosed defense, and they just don't like maul anybody. And quietly, I don't know if you noticed this, but like the Big 12 used to have this rep of this passing kind of soft, nobody plays defense league, but now it's a pretty hard-nosed league. Like you play defense and you run the ball.
Yes.
And Texas Tech was the outlier. They've kind of I think they're leaning more in to, we're going to have to run the ball. We're going to have to play 2 tight ends. We're going to have to play really good defense. And so I think I buy it. But again, Tech hasn't won a conference championship since 1976. Like Bill Parcells was the defensive coordinator the last time Texas Tech won a conference championship. Like that's a long time ago. And so thinking that they jump from like the 7-5, 8-4 type of team to conference championships, tough. But I mean, I believe in rosters, and that roster is really good.
Yeah, and it seems like Big 12, like you had said earlier, the point spreads are so close. It just seems like every year could just be drastically different. We could see maybe other than Cincinnati, we could see like the bottom go to the top go to the middle. It is my favorite. I'm an SEC guy, but I'm not a douchebag SEC guy. The Big 12 is one of my favorite conferences to watch. I do love the little guys. I don't want super leagues and none of that, like some fans root for or and all that. But that's interesting. So before we end it, and which we're getting close to 30 minutes, who is UTSA still the best group of 5 in Texas?
I think it's a 3-team race. I think North Texas and Texas State would have something to say about that, and UTSA plays both of them, so we'll be able to kind of settle that. I think I lean towards UTSA because I know their quarterback. Like Owen McCown, threw for over 3,000 yards last year. He helped UTSA close the season. Like when he got good, the Roadrunners got good at the end of the year. That's how they beat Memphis. They closed really strong on the year. Earlier in the year, when he was kind of finding his legs, they weren't very good. So in the G5, I'm putting out the all Texas teams on Monday. There's 54 players on there. There's only 7 from the G5 ranks. And it's because of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a returning all conference player in Texas in G5. They either transferred, went to the NFL, or graduated. And so we don't know a lot about these teams. The one known is UTSA's quarterback. Like Owen McCown is the one thing that you can point to and be like, I know that this thing is good. And so that's why I would still lean towards the Roadrunners. But North Texas, I think, is the interesting one to me. With Eric Morris, the first 2 years he's been there, they've been like a top 10 scoring offense, a top 25 total offense. Like they score a lot of points. He's an excellent offensive coordinator, but their defense has been ungodly bad. 121st in the nation, 133rd in the nation in scoring defense. They went and hired Skylar Cassidy for defensive coordinator, who I think is one of the best young defensive coordinators in the country. He was at Sam Houston last year, and he helped them get good and win 10 games. And that was a team that should not have won 10 games last year, and they did it mostly because of the defense. So if the offense stays as good as it's been and the defense just becomes average, I think North Texas could be a dark horse American Athletic Conference kind of contender because they don't play Memphis or Tulane.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. Before we end it, I got to end it on this because you do cover high school football and what many consider the best state to watch high school football. I am from Georgia, or not from Georgia. I was born in Texas, but I do live in Georgia, which is also another state that's considered big in football. Could you explain to people? Because, like I said, I was born there, and I lived there probably 2 months out of the year when I was a kid because my parents divorced. Dad lived in Texas, mom lived in Georgia.
Yep.
So I basically lived in both states for my whole life. I have a special place in my heart for the state of Texas. I go every year for summer, but I'm never there during high school football season. And me and my wife, I'll never forget. So my aunt lives in Van, Texas. I'm sure you know where that's at. It's like 2,000 people there, and not very many things there. But we were driving, and the high school football stadium's like this. It's pretty big, and everything else is so small. And she's like, "Man, they love their football here in Texas." Could you just explain how special Texas high school football is in that state to people that haven't experienced it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that they wrote the book about it, right? It's not hyperbole. Like it's not like it really is in most towns. The last one there, turn off all the lights. Everybody's gone on Friday night to go watch the football game, and it's just a resources thing, right? It's not that Texans are born better at football, or the communities just really care about public school, and they pass bonds. So the stadium is huge. And in Texas, I don't know if this is true in all the other states. In Texas, we have an athletic period starting from 7th grade on, where you spend an hour and a half a day in athletics. And here in this state, you play football. And over 6 years from 7th grade to 12th grade, imagine how many extra hours that is to practice football.
Yeah.
Coaches make $80,000 a year. They're full time. You have 6 or 7 full-time coaches like that teach classes that are there. I used to do recruiting. I would go to Arizona to go do an interview with Bijan Robinson. You'd show up to school to find the head coach, and he's selling a house because he's a mortgage broker. He's not even a full-time teacher or coach, right? Like that's insane to me as a Texan. Like, yeah, all of our coaches are full. You had a whole staff, and so it really is just that. It's just the town's caring about it. There is private schools, but it's not like other states where you can transfer within schools and all that kind of stuff. Like you really do play with who you grew up with.
That's awesome.
And I think it's made it pure. Now it's under attack. The voucher programs and stuff that have kind of gotten into a lot of other states are getting passed here, and maybe private schools become bigger and bigger, and that becomes less true. But like I went to the same high school that my dad went to and that my grandfather went to, and like I think there's still just some of that here. And like I said, I think the real difference, though, if you ask the coaches, it's just the extra practice time. You just extra 5 hours a week for 30 weeks of the school year for 6 years that you're in middle school and high school. Like you just have more than the kids in California, the kids in Florida. I think that's why you see Texans kind of tapped out as recruits. Like if you talk to college coaches, they say some of the blue chip guys in Texas, when they get to college, they're at their ceiling. Like they've already kind of reached their peak because they've had such good coaching and they've had so much time to kind of learn. Where you get guys from Louisiana, Florida, California, maybe they have more to go after high school. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really special. I would encourage anybody to go. I mean, you're from Tyler. That's where Earl Campbell's from. Like it's, Rose Stadium is out there, and, there'll be 15, 20,000 people at a high school football game on a Friday night. Like, our high school state championship games get 40,000 people in there.
That's crazy.
Right. Like just people care.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've been to a Georgia state title game, and they get a lot in there. I don't know that it's that many in the Georgia Dome. Man, this was cool. I hope to go to I'm supposed to be back in Texas. I don't know when y'all's playoffs or state titles. I'm supposed to be back for possibly Christmas because I'm going to a Cowboys game.
It's the week before.
Oh, shoot.
So like 19th, 20th, 21st, whenever that is. And it's like 10 games over 4 days in the same stadium. It's a lot.
It ends before Christmas.
It starts like the 1A, 2A, the towns with like 400 people in it playing 6-man football. And then it ends with the mega schools that everybody's heard about.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I won't be. One year I'm going to go and just go to the state title games. Man, I appreciate it. This was awesome. Hit it right at 30 minutes. You're one of the best that cover the state. Looking forward to your coverage this year, and we appreciate you coming on, Mike.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. We'll see you later.